Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the recorded material. Zoom for a change. So I don't know if you prefer it or you like it better or whatever, but I have a guest lecture coming in today, so it's easier for me to do it on Zoom. Before she joins us, I just wanted to give us a quick sense of where we're at in relation to the module and in relation to what we should be looking at this stage. As you develop and heighten your skill set in explicitly showing the theory and concepts and ideas from this module and showing how you can apply them in practice, I brought you in two people who can show you practice in marketing management, or the realistic view of the challenges that we have in this domain. So what you're looking at is marketing management in the future, so post-pandemic. So please don't look to the past as such, but look to the future. And it's strategic marketing, so it's at least 6 months to a year in. And we can say that we're at that kind of transitional stage in this blurring of the digital and the physical. And really what we're saying is it's the survival of the most adaptable and the most agile marketing managers. So what we're going to do within this guest lecture is she's going to really show you, and so is Fergal, some ideas about how to grapple with the theories, the concepts, and the content of this module, and show application of theory in practice, because this is what you must do in your group and in your individual. So what I've shown her and what we've discussed in class is I've turned our learning outcomes into questions, and Naluka will address some of these questions within her presentation. The one she'll also address specifically, and I'll ask her this at the end, is, what were the techniques that you used to really engage and drive the agenda at the top management team? So some insights into how that you can do that within your assignments and ultimately when you go out into the workforce. So this is the wow impact, how to be creative, engaging with the content. So the questions you're going to have for this week are, to clearly show evidence of your depth. That should be depth of engagement with the module content, and show clearly an application of AI within marketing research, within STP, and within marketing actions. And then the second question is that idea of the blurring of the boundaries between digital and physical, and what are you actually going to suggest about being digitally ready. So remember, this is an open book exam. You have the content, so I can assume that you can transfer the content from where it is to your assignment. And what I'm really looking for is that challenge of how you will deploy this. And remember, we've done that each week within the live classes. With every single case study has shown you an example, and you've grappled with it within the class, shown you an example that you grappled with of how to apply theory in practice. So as I say in the live class, you're moving from the group, so that's why the skydivers are all together, into the individual. So skydiving alone, I don't know, skydiving is a good example, but so what you're going to do as you move from the group to the individual is you're going to say, right, well, how would I do this well if I was doing this on my own? And how would I really start again at each week and really develop each week, and that synthesis and that integration. The individual assignment is due the 3rd of December, and your group assignment is due next Tuesday, no later than 4 o'clock. I will discuss the key learnings from this week, which are really this idea of sense and respond, be agile and adaptive to the conditions of the future. Don't give us a historical view of the pandemic or anything like that. Like, what is that? You have to be the futurist. You have to tell the company where the customer is going to be in 6 months' time. Drive the marketing management and the customer focus throughout the assignment, and make sure there's a synthesis and a flow so that you don't have the silos, that you have integrated, which is what we looked at in weeks 1 and week 2 and week 3, how to integrate marketing in a company, and you're doing that integration within your assignment. Remember, it's data-driven decision-making, and I think Fergal goes through that in great detail. And always focus on and understand your mindset, your philosophy, your vision, your culture, whatever word you want to use, but that must underpin your decisions. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and in a couple of minutes, I'll introduce you to Naluka, and we will start the guest the guest presentation. So hello once again, and as you can see, Naluka is here. So I'm going to hand immediately over to Naluka to share with you some of her challenges and experiences, and to really allow her to reflect on the practice and explicitly show us the challenges in practice. So before I hand over, I just want to thank you very much, Naluka, for coming, and I'm now going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Mairead, and hello everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. And I want to start today with a question. Imagine you bump into the Chief Growth Officer of your organization. You have 2 minutes to pitch your marketing idea. You need their buy-in to get the budget and resource needed. What's the first few sentences you will say? How will you capture their attention? So I want you to now think about a marketing campaign you like. And I want you to really imagine that you're in this situation. You need this person's buy-in. I want you to turn to the person next to you and discuss what's the first few sentences you might say. If you're watching this on your own, then give it some reflection now and think about it. What is it that's going to capture their attention and make them listen to you? These are very busy people, okay? This is a Chief Growth Officer. So I'll give you maybe 30 seconds now to think about that. Write it down, perhaps, if you have a pen and paper near you, or if you're with someone, discuss with them. Okay, so perhaps you've had a think about that, and there's some things that spring to mind. But this is a very real situation that many marketers find themselves in. And I hope today that I can help you become better positioned to understand how you can communicate with senior management better. What skill set, what mindset do you need as a marketeer? And do that by sharing with you some of my own experiences and some of my own journey within marketing. I want you to look at this statement now. Marketing management isn't just about the what and when. It's about the how and why. So this is a really interesting statement, and it's something that is going to run across the theme of this guest lecture today. It's not just about production and content creation. Mairead has told me that you're studying this in your advertising management model. But really, it's about the deeper why and the how behind what you are doing. And this is probably a nice point to actually introduce myself. So my name is Naluka Kavanagh. I work at KPMG in our customer marketing and brand strategy practice. But what was really interesting is I started my career at Jack Wills, so you can see on the left-hand corner there, within marketing. And my role was focused on marketing content and social media, B2C marketing, right? So very much focused on the what and the when in that role. You know, each day, what were we creating, when it needs to go out on social media, etc. I then moved to KPMG, but my first role at KPMG was in B2B marketing, and this was around campaign planning, and also I worked with the digital marketing team quite closely. So again, still focused quite in the what and the when of marketing, but then I moved into a client-focused role, which is where I am in now. And you can see on the screen some of the clients I've helped with their own marketing: the civil service, Tesco Bank, Schroders Personal Wealth. And often I'm helping clients with their own marketing and their own customer-centric positioning. I'm facing off to the C-suite and marketing management who want to drive their own agenda within their company. And the reason I wanted to introduce myself to you in this way in my career is because I've very much moved away or less so focused on the what and the when of marketing to the why and the how, to a deeper, more strategic lens. In other words, I was at the tip of the iceberg. I was at the tip of that marketing iceberg that you're familiar with, but I've now moved to considering marketing as a whole. So the whole iceberg that lies beneath the surface too. I want to bring this to life to you a little bit and give you an example of a project that I worked on, a live project I worked on. Was live, it's no longer one I'm working on right now, but it was probably one of my favorite projects. And it was a project with a financial services firm. And I'll read out the brief to you. So our brief was to run a target market analysis or customer segmentation and equip the CMO and their team with the right resources for optimum marketing management. So the CMO and their marketing team, they were really struggling. They needed help with understanding the customer, but also not just that, but having the right tools and resources needed to improve their marketing management and essentially become more efficient. And what was interesting, what was really interesting is that a lot of the conversations we had were based in terms of wider company timelines, budget sign-off, senior leadership meetings. So our aim was to deliver on this brief, of course, but it was also to make the client, the marketing function, look good to their own key stakeholders and empower them with what they needed for optimum marketing management. So to give you an overview of three of the key deliverables, on the left-hand side, you can see the target market analysis and segmentation piece of work. So this was really qualifying the population that was eligible to be a client of this financial services firm. And then not just that, but once we qualified these people, these broad brush segments, we then went a level deeper and created personas. So the segments were more around the demographics, the age, the location of the customers, but the personas were about the attitudes, the wants, the needs, the behaviors. So a really deep analysis of that. And off the back of that, we then, you can see in the middle, developed a channel and messaging strategy. And I'm not going to dwell too much here as I'm conscious this is probably more so covered in your advertising management module. And then on the right-hand side, we did a continuous improvement piece. Because you will know from your own studies that marketing management is not static. It's shifting, it's moving. It needs to be continually assessed. So what we did is we developed a continuous improvement model. Test, learn, optimize. How can marketing as a team improve in the longer term? How do they know what good looks like? So that was a really interesting piece too. That's a case study that I've worked on. It's worth reflecting on what some of the challenges are, pushback or questions that marketers get asked. And indeed, our client came to us with some of these challenges they were being faced with in their own organization. To be very clear, our client was the marketing department. So it's really important to consider these because marketing cannot and should not exist in isolation. It needs to be connected. It's not monolithic. So what are some of the challenges that may be faced by other senior C-suite level stakeholders in a business? Hey, how do I know this is going to create commercial value? Our resource and budget is already pretty stretched. Shouldn't we focus on more important things? Look, I already have so much going on my plate. How are you going to make this easy for me? Okay, I get the idea, but what evidence do you have to ensure this is going to be a success? How are you going to measure and track marketing performance and progress? So some real examples, and clearly this is, overall, but it's worth noting that different members of the C-suite, different members of those key stakeholders are going to have slightly different questions. The COO and the CFO will have different needs and different projects. So as marketers, what is key is to identify what's going on their own agenda, what's going on in the business as a whole? And how can marketing help them, this individual you're speaking to, that you need their help and their buy-in, how can marketing help them achieve that goal? So we really need to get our heads into this idea of a total company effort. It's really, really important to consider that. Being connected to what else is going on in the business, that will help you answer the questions that you can see on your screen now. As a general rule, going back to this theme I mentioned at the start, when communicating with senior leadership, the why becomes the most important. Why are we doing this? Followed by the how. And so some levers that you can really pull to nail that why piece, you can see here. Firstly, using data analytics on the customer, really showcasing that you understand the customer and you've got that information on them. And hey, this marketing strategy is going to meet those needs. Secondly, using the relevant context. And this is really interesting because we've almost got, you can think about it as the macro and the micro context. So you've got the macro context of the market as a whole or the industry you're in and why we should be doing this campaign or this piece of marketing. And then you've got the micro context of the organization. Remember what I just mentioned around understanding what's on the agenda of the business as a whole. And then also using the competitive landscape. So knowing what your competitors are doing, knowing what the white space opportunity is at hand, or maybe you can use what's known as laddering. Laddering, you may have come across that term before, highlighting a strength of your own company. And in doing so, you're simultaneously showcasing a weakness in a key competitor. So think about that, the customer, the market, the business, and your competitors. And these are really helpful areas to think about when you are communicating with the C-suite. Okay, so when I consider the unique marketing management skills that marketers need to have and the best teams I've worked in throughout my career, there are 4 really key traits that come to mind. The first is agility. I'm sure you've heard that one a lot before. The agility to adapt to changing circumstances in the market or the organization. To know not everything is going to go to plan. So I'll give you an example. I was doing a marketing newsletter for the civil service, and we planned out all the content that was to be included. But we weren't able to do one section because the go live dates of the products that we were advertising in that section, they weren't out yet. So we had to be very agile and consider what are we going to use instead. And we had to do this in the space of a couple of days. So the lesson is you can have a plan. It's important that you do have a plan, but that plan can go askew, especially when you think about how marketing is connected with the wider organization. So having agility is really key. Second, having a longer term strategic mindset, not just being in the here and now. And I remember when I started off in Jack Wills, I so was in that mindset. It can get hectic at times, right? Marketeers often are very, very busy. They're juggling a lot of things on their plate, you know, but what's interesting is that having a longer term strategic mindset will help you prioritize. And having the question in your head, how can I use marketing to future-proof this business? And making sure that you're linking marketing to business and financial outcomes. It's not about getting caught up in the nitty-gritty of what slogan you'll use or what exact shade of blue is going to work better. Of course, these are things that are important, but you need to consider, remember that whole iceberg piece. We can't just be stuck at the top, right? We need to consider the longer term, that strategic element, as well as the nitty-gritty here and now, okay? And then the third trait, creative but pragmatic. We often hear that marketers are creative. I do agree with that. I'm fairly creative. I'm actually pretty creative myself, but I'm also pragmatic. It's really important that you have a boots on the ground skill set too. Okay, blue sky thinking is great. I absolutely love it. I love to dream big, but you also have to challenge that with an awareness of what's required, the resource, the time, the effort, the money, the people. So creative, but pragmatic too. And finally, being a customer champion. So in an environment, and I've seen this quite a lot, in an environment where finance and commercials often shout the loudest, marketers need to bring the voice of a customer to what they do. The more that you can do that with conviction and perseverance, the more likely your ideas are to be implemented. So always put the customer at the heart. And this applies to both B2B and B2C marketing. So it's worth reflecting on those 4 key skills and considering, when you may need to use them more than in what circumstances more than others. Okay, but all 4, these are holistic. All 4 should be used and are important for marketers. Okay, so from my own experience, then I started out doing marketing and very much focused on production. I moved into marketing management and advising other companies on their own marketing and customer strategy. What are some of the key takeaways that I can share? Well, firstly, marketing is not monolithic. It's complex, it's integrated. It's only one part of a whole, and it cannot operate in isolation. And in fact, if you ever see an organization or work in an organization where it is operating in isolation, it's probably not very effective, okay? It's probably not delivering as much business value as it could. Point 2, tensions are going to arrive and you will be scrutinized. So how you meet these challenges, remember that slide with those challenges, those 4 bubbles, how you meet them is key. So having a marketing mindset and drawing on those traits that I just mentioned. Thirdly, the deeper, more strategic layer of marketing is never too early to develop. So when I look back on my career, if I was to go back, I would start developing that more strategic view, the why of what we're doing earlier on. It's never too early to do that. And so in hindsight, I think even when I was working at Jack Wills in the marketing department, and when I started at KPMG marketing them, KPMG as an organization, I think I could have started, considering, is what we're doing delivering the best value? Could we pivot, etc., rather than just getting focused on the here and now. Fourthly, framing. Framing is important. So again, focusing on the why when you're speaking to C-suite and getting challenged. And finally, knowing that marketing decision making, so we're going to be faced with tons of decisions, that it's assessed on the longer term significance on the business as a whole, not just on the importance and urgency of a task. And by the way, I will say that this is relevant for all areas of your career or of your work. We often think that, we do see these matrices where we think I need to focus on the importance of what I'm doing now and the urgency of what I'm doing now. But we tend to, as humans, think less about the significance, i.e., is this going to have an impact in 6 months' time, a year's time? And also that's an interesting framework for marketeers, because they need to be thinking that as well. But you can apply that also generally when you're making decisions in your life and career. It's a nice one to be aware of. So these are some lessons that I've learned in marketing management and the key takeaways that I can share with you. I really hope that this has been helpful, and you'll have these slides as well to look through in your own time. We've covered everything from giving you an example marketing case study. We've looked at the main challenges that you can get faced by the C-suite, and also the levers that you can pull when addressing the why of marketing. So I hope this has been helpful. And Mairead, I will pass back to you.
Super, super, super. I'm going to give you the round of applause they would have given you if they were in the room, because that was really spectacular. I hope the students were doing what I was doing, which was I was making notes as you were talking, and I was saying, and I was just, I know we've worked together before, Niluka, but I was just saying to myself how well that aligns with our course. And I think what's lovely is these students are, you know, you as a young person, and when you talk to them, they're starting their career. And what you say to them is, look, these are the things I would have liked to know when I was a junior. And I would feel the same. I was thinking when you said, looking back in your career, I started my career in selling, and it was all the urgency and the immediacy. And did I have time to think of the why? So I love this idea of telling them, hey, you know, can we look at the strategic? Can we think bigger? And so that was fantastic. Two little things I want to ring the bell for them to remember is, Niluka actually showcased that iceberg to you so well. Now I know it's in chapter 1. I know we discuss it almost every week, but she did it again. This idea of the integration of marketing, that marketing isn't there in isolation, and that idea of show them rather than tell them. Nobody is persuaded by telling them, you know, do this, do that, you should do this. People want to know why. Why should I do that? Why? So that's the question I'm going to ask you. I gave Niluka these questions so she knows what your challenge is for your assignment. But the question I'm going to ask you about is just a little bit more depth on that marketing management skill and technique when you're talking to the C-suite. And what I've written on the last slide in week 9 is wow them. You know, they're busy people, as you say. You cannot walk in and not, you know, really wow them, and just a couple of ideas on how they could do that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mairead. So I think there's 3 things that really come to mind here that I really encourage you to think about. The first is, I did touch on this just now, but really knowing what's on the agenda, doing your research before you even go into that discussion, okay? Knowing what they're working on, knowing what projects they're interested in. So the reason I say that is because when you have that information and you've done your research, then you can find the link as to how we can use marketing to help them achieve those goals. So they're much more likely to warm to you, to warm to what you're proposing, if they see that it's going to help them achieve their own key project or something that they're working on. It's almost like, how can you help them look good? So that's the first thing I really want you to bear in mind. Do your research on the stakeholder or stakeholders. Know what they're interested in. Know what, you know, as part of the wider business agenda, what they're going to be focusing on, and then make the link. Make the link to what you're proposing and how marketing can help them. Okay. The second piece, when going in, remember I spoke about those levers to pull when it gets to the why you're proposing what you're doing. So don't come in without context. Context is king. So making sure that you have some data or analytics or information and insight on the customer that backs up why you're proposing this. Making sure that you're embedding it within the context of the organization, but also the wider market. And also making sure that you have an understanding of what your competitors are doing. So that white space opportunity at hand, because you need to go in with this broad landscape picture, because you need to showcase to them that what you're planning to do is going to be appropriate, it's going to be relevant, it's going to be timely. Okay. So that's the second thing I'd recommend. And the third thing is trying to link it to the beneficial commercial impact. Okay. What, you know, in a worst case, best case scenario, this marketing plan that you're proposing, what's going to be the commercial impact. Okay. And so having that longer term view is really key, and keeping business performance in mind versus getting caught up on the nitty-gritty of the campaign itself. Because no offense, this person probably won't care whether you're going to use this shade of red or that shade of red. Okay. So try not to get too much into the nitty-gritty of the content itself, but the impact that you predict this is going to have. So Mairead, I'd say those 3 things. Firstly, knowing the person you're speaking to, what's on their agenda, doing your research up front and linking it to how marketing is going to help them achieve that. Secondly, pulling on those levers that I mentioned in the presentation so that you have the context to what you're saying, and it will really help you kind of showcase why you're proposing what you're doing. And then thirdly, linking to a beneficial commercial impact, so that wider business performance piece. I think those three probably for me would be the top things, the top strategies when going in to speak.
Super, super, super. Really, again, you just kind of ran through our course, because they've been given the marketing actions, or the critical issues that the company is going to have. So they know them through the module content. But what you said is, what is their pain point? Why are they going to listen to you? What is the real challenge in that room? And you said, don't walk into the room until you've said, look, I know your pain point is this. And the luckiest thing for the students is they've been told they can make that up. So it can be hypothetical as such. So they can go in and say, we know your challenge is that we're not digital ready. So they've been given, across the module. So, but they need to know to use that, because they need to walk in and say that. And the second point that you used there, this whole idea of the why and the leverage, what we've said to them is, what are the gems that matter? Give them a piece of data and a piece of information that says, wow, okay, I didn't know that. Luca has told me that. I now know that. And that wakes them up, because if it just is chatty and it has to be embedded in the data. If it doesn't come from the data and research, well, it's just nicely guesswork. It's nicely hypothetical. And we do need creativity and intuition, and that. But in that room, you're going to have the creatives, you're going to have the finance, you're going to have the people who need to dice and slice the numbers. So we need to, as marketeers, we need to bring both. We need to be able to embed that in the data, and as you say on your third one, be able to embed that in the long-term impact for the company. And tell them, look, this is what would happen if we did this. So you have to be a futurist. It's your job to say, do this now, or do this, because that's where the customer is going to be. So really, I thought you kind of sat, on top of the course so well, and gave them that. I love your first slide. The why. The why are we doing this? What is the reason for this? And I think embedding that. Do you have time for one quick question?
Yeah.
So what would you, if you were talking about digital and AI, do you have anything, to link that and the future of marketing? Do you have anything around digital AI or the future of marketing management? Anything in that domain at all?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So I think, MarTech, marketing technology is going to be huge. I'm working on a project at the moment where we are looking at their MarTech strategy, and because they are a very, let's just say, traditional, behind the curve client, and they're not using technology in their marketing. It's pretty manual. So in terms of the future, I see MarTech being used a lot more, probably less close to the AI side of things, but I definitely see us moving to, as marketeers, using, I think data is going to become much more important. To your point, I really don't want people to think, creativity is not going to be important anymore. It absolutely is. But we're going to be harnessing that and complementing it through using data, through using MarTech platforms, through using more sophisticated programming that's going to help us, for example, detect leads earlier, or gain a more deeper insight into customers. I also think that, again, in the future of marketing, something that we're doing at KPMG is seeing how we can use behavioral science and behavioral insight a little bit more in terms of our customers. So, how you ask questions and how we go about that side of things, using behavioral science to really understand not just what a customer tells us they prefer, but actually what they actually prefer based on their actions and behaviors, because we know that what people say and what people do aren't always the same. So I see a trend there moving to actually understand a more deeper psychographic element of customers, as well as a trend towards more sophisticated MarTech platforms, using data much more when we're kind of planning our marketing. I think that will really help marketers become stronger as well, because to your point, Mairead, it's not just about using intuition and thinking that, oh, this could be a nice idea, but actually using technology, data and insight to back up why that could be a good idea, or even to give you that good idea, right? So that comes first. I think that's what I'm seeing the trend moving towards.
Gosh, that is brilliant. Again, that is so good, because what I was doing there was I was flicking through to get to this reading that the students have, and I wanted to get the name of it right, because you started off by saying you're working with a company that's very traditional and very manual in their marketing. So again, the students are allowed to create it hypothetically, so they can go in and say, right, you are traditional in your marketing, and here's how. So they're allowed to create that, create the problem and give the company the solution. So we have a super article called Building Digital Ready Culture in Traditional Organizations. Now, it's a Sloan Management Review article, and the students are able to give the company a step-by-step approach for how to go from where they are to where they need to be. So you sat right on top of that particular reading, and then I'll flick to their next reading that you sat on top of as well, which are you really kind of engaged with, which is they have this reading, a strategic framework for artificial intelligence in marketing. And your first answer to the AI was exactly what we've done in class, because we've looked at the adoption and the time scale of adoption, and we're saying, look, we're not there yet. We're seriously at early stage adoption of AI in marketing. So I was delighted when you said, well, we're not really doing all that much there, because I do think that's where we're at. But I also think I think we've got more of it than we realize, particularly AI in market research. In dicing and slicing the data and finding those customer insights, companies are using, as you said, sophisticated, customer analysis databases, much more sophisticated than I would have used, even 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just to add to that, I think it goes back to the culture, the organizational, and also the culture within the marketing team. Because if you've got people who, to your point around, traditional, slower organizations who don't necessarily want to adopt or may not even know what's out there, that is very different to a culture which is more focused on driving continual performance improvement, that are looking for more innovation. So there is also a cultural piece there. I think sometimes these things are slow to adopt because A, people don't necessarily know that it exists, but also B, people can be resistant to change if it's new, if it seems complex. So also something to bear in mind, the culture of the organization and the marketing team within that organization.
Gosh, that's exactly it. The culture or the mindset or the philosophy, and then where, and like, how do we drive that? And I also love that you mentioned there, that improvement piece, because the students have done that. They've done one iteration of their assignment, and then they did an improvement plan, and they're now in the middle of doing the second iteration, because marketing is always about, and I think you said it there earlier, I think you said something about, test, learn, optimize.
Yes.
And I just laughed when you said that, because I went, that's what they did. They did an assignment, they tested themselves, then they learned through viewing other assignments, and they did a comparison, and now they have to optimize that for a group and then for an individual. So you can see, Luke, I'm talking to you, but I'm also I'm conscious this is a recording, so I'm also
Absolutely.
talking to the students. And one last one on AI before I let you go, because I know you have an 11 o'clock and I'm going to the class at 11 o'clock. So I loved what you said about the AI, that we might not have got it to where we need it to be on that whole idea of creativity or the thinking, feeling AI, because what we've been looking at is a lot of the AI is mechanical, what it can do faster than the human and kind of automation. But we've also looked at as a class this idea of the thinking AI and the feeling AI, and where they can give us the ideas. So we looked at this idea from a database that told us a new interesting target market. And that was AI gave us that target market. And then we came up with the creatives. So I think that's where we're at. We're slowly going to, I just loved your example, that company that isn't digitally ready and doesn't have that culture. And that's the project you're working on, which is the project the students are working on as well. So that's very, very, very helpful. I can't think of any more compliments to give you, Naluka, because that was just a super presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I want to thank you on behalf of the students, because they need to see or to hear people like you engaging and grappling with the theoretical concepts, the ideas from the textbook and from the readings, and saying, what does that look like in practice? So
well, it's been brilliant, a brilliant opportunity. And when I was doing this lecture for your other set of students, Mairead, I said if anyone wants to reach out on LinkedIn, please do. But I hope you found this useful. And again, Mairead, thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really great speaking with you and working with you as well.
Super, super, super. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now in 1 second and get this right this time. I'm actually going to stop the recording. Okay, and then, right, so the recording is going to end in 3, 2, 1.